This lesson will introduce you to the different types of epithelial tissue in the body. While you watch the video, please fill in the chart that you'll find on the next slide. As you watch the video, please write a description of each of the tissues, draw a picture that looks like the tissue, and then describe the location and function for each of the tissue types. Please pause the video if you need some additional time to copy the chart. Epithelial tissue is classified and named based on two characteristics. The first word in the name will represent the number of cell layers in the tissue. If you see the word simple, it represents one cell layer thick. Stratified means that it has multiple cell layers. Pseudostratified is a type of epithelial tissue that appears layered, but it is actually only one cell layer thick. The second part of the name represents the shapes of the cells. Squamous represents flattened cells, cuboidal represents cube-shaped cells, and columnar are tall, column-shaped cells. In this picture, you can see the different cell shapes and the difference between simple, where you have one cell layer, and stratified, where you have cells stacked on top of each other. In the simple cuboidal, notice that the dark purple nucleus of each cell are round, whereas in the simple squamous, the nuclei appear more oval or flattened shape. In the simple columnar, the nuclei are also oval shaped. This is going to help you later on when you have to identify the epithelial tissue in a microscope slide. We're now going to discuss the different types of epithelium that you find in the body. The first type of epithelium that we'll discuss is simple squamous epithelium. Simple squamous epithelium is a single layer of flattened cells. The nuclei are disc-shaped or more flattened looking. The main functions of simple squamous epithelium are to allow diffusion of gases and chemicals to pass from one side of the cell to the other. You'll find simple squamous epithelium lining the alveoli in the lungs, which are the air spaces. Oxygen and carbon dioxide can diffuse through these cells and into the bloodstream. You'll also find simple squamous epithelium lining the blood vessels, again to allow gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide to diffuse, or to allow nutrients to pass from one layer of the cell into the tissues. This is a sample of tissue from the alveoli in the lungs. The white area that you see is air, where oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged. The light pink area are the actual cells. They're very flat. This is the squamous cell. The dark pink or dark purple dots are the nucleus of each individual cell. The next type of epithelial cells are simple cuboidal cells. Simple cuboidal cells are a single layer of cube-shaped cells. The nuclei of simple cuboidal cells are round. They also line up almost in a straight line. This helps you to identify that it is a single layer of cells. The functions of simple cuboidal cells are to secrete chemicals like hormones and to absorb things like nutrients. You find simple cuboidal cells lining the glands in your body and lining the kidney tubules. In the kidneys, they help to absorb and secrete things like nutrients and wastes to maintain correct blood composition. In this slide, we see many different simple cuboidal cells. The simple cuboidal cells are forming tubes, and they are secreting a chemical into these tubes. I have circled an individual simple cuboidal cell. There's a pink arrow pointing to one individual cell. The blue arrow is pointing to the tube, which is called a lumen, that is formed by the simple cuboidal cells. A green arrow is pointing to the nucleus of a simple cuboidal cell. The next type of epithelial tissue in the body are simple columnar cells. Simple columnar cells are a single layer of very tall shaped cells that are almost column shaped. The nuclei in a simple columnar cell is oval shaped. There are some type of simple columnar cells that have cilia at the top, which are very small finger-like projections. The functions of a simple columnar cell are to secrete chemicals and to absorb things. If the simple columnar cell has cilia, the cilia are there to move debris along the surface of the cell. You will find simple columnar cell lining our digestive tract and lining some of our glands in the body. In this picture, I have a red arrow pointing to an individual simple columnar cell. There is an oval-shaped nucleus in the center of the cell. At the top of the slide, there is an area that looks almost like a layer of fuzz. That's the cilia at the top of this slide. The free edge that's exposed to the surface is at the top. There's a layer of connective tissue at the bottom, which we don't need to worry about at this time. The next type of epithelial tissue that we will discuss are pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelial cells. These cells appear to be stratified or layered, but they are actually only a single layer of column-shaped cells. Their nuclei will be at varying heights, but they are all actually attached to the basement membrane, so they're a single layer. These cells will have cilia at the top, and they secrete mucus. These cells will be found lining our nasal cavity and lining our trachea. They secrete mucus to help move debris and protect our body from invading pathogens and send that debris back out the body. This is an example of pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelial cells. If you look at the nuclei, you can see that they are not all lined up at the same level. So it makes it appear as though these cells are stratified. However, all of these cells attach to the basement membrane. You can also see the cilia at the top of this tissue. The last two types of tissue that we are going to discuss are stratified, meaning they have multiple layers of cells. Stratified squamous tissue has multiple layers of cells that become flattened as you reach the superficial layer, or the free edge. The main function of stratified squamous tissue is to protect. You find stratified squamous tissue on the epidermis of skin, which is the skin that is exposed to the surface of the body, and lining the esophagus. This is a sample of tissue from the epidermis of the skin. You can see the dark purple nucleus of the individual cells, and they are stacked on top of each other. These are stratified cells. They are layered, and if you look towards the top, the cells become very, very flat. This is stratified squamous tissue. The last type of epithelium that we are going to discuss is transitional epithelium. Transitional epithelium is a stratified type of epithelium where the deeper layers of cells are cuboidal or columnar shaped, and as you get towards the surface, they become squamous or dome shaped. Now, the unique thing about transitional epithelium is that the cells can compress to allow an organ to stretch or expand. You find transitional epithelium in the urinary bladder. So as the urinary bladder fills, these cells compress to allow more space inside the bladder.